Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Bed Crime Stories podcast. I'm your host, T, and today I want to talk some more about updates in the Dylan Rounds case. I wrote to NamUs, the National Database of Missing and Unidentified People in the United States, to ask them where they got the detail about Dylan's key fob being missing initially from his trailer, but later turning up because an unknown person returned it to the trailer. NamUs never responded back to me, but they have since changed the information in Dylan's entry. The information about the key fob being returned has been removed. Suddenly, that part of the narrative is gone. Here is all that it says now about Dylan's F-150 Ford truck. Dylan's vehicle was found at his residence and later processed as evidence. NamUs also changed Dylan's weight information. Initially, the entry said that Dylan weighed 160 pounds. Now it says that he weighed between 95 and 145 pounds. The description of Dylan's disappearance now reads, Dylan went missing under suspicious circumstances that are now being investigated as a criminal investigation. Dylan spoke with his grandmother on 5/28/2022 and told her that he was putting his grain truck away and that he would call her back at a later time. Dylan did not call his grandmother back, and he has had no other contact with his family. A substantial search was done of the vast desert in Lucin, Utah, but he has not been located at this time. End quote. One thing I find notable in this description is the careful wording about the 6:51 a.m. call, the phone call between Dylan and his grandmother. Notice how it doesn't say who called whom. I think the NamUs person behind this entry isn't sure who called who, and that's why they worded it that way. So it doesn't really help us. We're all still wondering which information is correct. I'm sticking by Dylan called his grandmother because I heard that that's what the official phone records say. Of course, that could be misinformation. Now, I find the revised weight information about Dylan also interesting, and that's because if Dylan did have a physical confrontation with Jim Brenner, it makes it clear that the much lighter Dylan would have been up against a much heavier man. Jim Brenner weighed 235 pounds when he was booked into the Weber County Jail. Dylan would have been at a disadvantage from a strictly girth perspective, but on the other hand, 19-year-old Dylan would have had the advantage of youth and speed over the 59-year-old Brenner. Let's talk a little bit more about the advantages/disadvantages between Dylan and Jim Brenner. Is it possible that Dylan didn't bother to bring his pistol with him during the early morning run to quickly get that grain truck under the shelter of the workshop/grain shed? Remember, Dylan was said to keep his .40 caliber pistol in his F-150 truck. Maybe he forgot to grab it because he was tired. Maybe he thought about it, but decided he wasn't likely going to need it for the trip back home. Or maybe he did have it with him, but it wasn't in his hand when he was attacked. If he was surprised by Brenner, Dylan maybe couldn't have grabbed his pistol quickly enough. Brenner, on the other hand, was at his home, right, in that abandoned trailer near the grain shed. Brenner had access to 3 muzzle loaders and a .22 caliber rifle at the time. There might have been more firepower there, but that's all that we know for sure about his stash. Let's say Brenner decided ahead of time that he was going to take Dylan's life. If Brenner surprised Dylan with an attack near the grain shed, Dylan would have been at a disadvantage in so many respects. First, his smaller size. He simply couldn't match Brenner's girth. 2, fatigue from planting all night would have made his reaction time slower. 3, being caught unaware by someone who had the stuff required to take another person's life. Dylan had no clue who he was dealing with in Jim Brenner. In fact, no one in Lucin or Montello seems to have had any clue that Brenner had previously assaulted someone with the intent to take that person's life. That's very different from a bar brawl. Speaking of Jim Brenner, he seems to have found a soft heart in Montello local Ellenberg. Ellen was on Salty Pancake's channel yesterday, and she asked the question, what if Brenner didn't do this, and he's being dragged through the mud? She didn't say it exactly like that, but that was the gist of it. Ellen was basically saying, what if Brenner isn't guilty, and now everyone thinks he's a dangerous person, and his reputation in town is destroyed? I have a problem with this. It appears that the warm-hearted Ellen Berg has completely dismissed Jim Brenner's past criminal history. Remember, convicted felon Jim Brenner was charged with assault with intent to murder. I would offer that Brenner's reputation was destroyed a long time ago, and that's why Montello and Lucin were the perfect places for him to hang his hat at this point in his troubled life. Pretty much everyone there has a story and dark secrets. It's like in prison where no one talks about their crimes and everyone is innocent. It's a code. Don't ask, don't tell. Ty Corbin has told us that Montello is a place where the unspoken agreement is never call the cops. Handle disputes by yourselves. What Ellen Berg seems to be lamenting is that now that everyone in Montello and Lucin knows the truth about Jim Brenner, and they can't bury that knowledge out in the desert, Brenner is no longer just another middle-aged guy with a grumpy disposition who likes to sit at the Saddle Sore bar on Friday night. To Ellen, it would appear that Brenner seemed like a poor, abandoned human being living on a shoestring without any family. But Berg should not dismiss Brenner's violent past. In my opinion, Jim Brenner was a ticking time bomb out there. There are people who've done time in prison and who do have a hard time making a living post-incarceration. They're often in need of help, and they're often shunned by society, especially if they show signs of being, say, homeless and uncared for, maybe missing teeth from poor dental care over many decades, prison tattoos carved roughly into their skin, wearing dirty, holey clothes, clearly not having the money to provide shelter and transportation for themselves. The difference is that not all of these convicted felons have assaulted a human being with the aim of taking that person's life. Brenner has. Full stop, as they say. And speaking of Ellen Berg, boy did she receive the love in Salty's chat yesterday. People are connecting with Berg because she is very emotional when she speaks. She shares her life stories without a filter. She talked about the art of dealing cards as a Vegas dealer. Apparently she did that for many years and during the period when Vegas was Vegas, baby. Like when Elvis played there, rhinestones and all. Berg's coming across as a very decent, welcoming person, but we have to remember that Ellen Berg has been caught on audio telling two very different stories about Kurt Wadsworth. Ellen told Dylan's mother, Candace Cooley, that Kurt had a male lover and a hidden bunker, allegedly. But later on Salty Pancake's channel, Ellen backpedaled and had nothing but good things to say not only about Kurt Wadsworth, but also about his brother Troy. She seems to be playing both sides of the fence, but the only people keeping track of that seem to be Kurt Wadsworth, who's still angry with Ellen, and the PI Jim Terry. I'd like Ellen to explain why she told Candace a different story than what she says publicly on Salty's channel about Kurt Wadsworth. I'm not out to get Ellen Berg. I like her too. But I would like an explanation for the differing stories. Now, we know that law enforcement's primary suspect so far is 59-year-old James Adrian Brenner. And there's been a lot of talk about how tall Brenner is. That's because of the position of the seat in Dylan's F-150 truck when his family came to look for him on Monday, May 30th. You may recall that the seat was all the way forward. Well, let me put a rest to the discussion about Brenners Height. The Weber County Jail, where Brenner is currently incarcerated and where they weighed him and took his height, say in its entry about Jim Brenner that he's 5 feet 10 inches tall. That makes him pretty much the same height as Dylan Rounds. The entry also says that Brenner weighs 235 pounds, has gray hair, and blue eyes. So I'm hoping we can count on this information as being accurate. Knowing that Brenner is 5'10" makes Dylan's seat being all the way forward even more of a conundrum. Brenner would not have needed to move that seat forward. So why was the seat in that position? Who put it there? Did Brenner do that to throw off law enforcement? To send them looking for a person of short stature? Or what? More questions. Moving on to Dylan's mother, Candace Cooley. She left a message on the Missing Dylan Rounds Facebook page on August 8th of 2022. Here's what Cooley wrote. I would like to say thank you to all of the amazing people that follow Dylan's story and have stuck with the facts. This is Hank. My husband and I inherited Hank about 2.5 years ago, and he was Dylan's puppy. Dylan was frustrated with Hank because Dylan would work all day long in the tractor, and Hank would sleep while he worked and want to play at night. Dylan would be exhausted, and Hank would only want to play. So I told Dylan, leave Hank with me. I will take care of him. I have had him since. Every time Dylan would come, Hank was always happy to see him. This picture was taken Sunday. When we bring Dylan home, this is how Hank will greet him. And I'm including a photo of Hank in this video so you can see it. I also want to clear up a few issues. We've heard that Dylan and farmhand/Lucin neighbor Don Hatley parted ways before Dylan's disappearance. Well, in case you don't know, Dylan and Don had an argument over Dylan deciding to fix a washing machine before fixing a pump on the farm. The argument was so heated that Dylan basically let Don Hatley go. That argument occurred in April of 2022, and it's the first incident on the family's official timeline of Dylan's disappearance. It's interesting that they decided to include that event in the timeline. This leads me to believe they felt that rupture between Dylan and Don was important to the case in some way. Why else would they include it? According to the official timeline, Dylan's muck boots were found inside his trailer, so it doesn't sound like he was wearing those when he drove the grain truck to the grain shed. Some people have speculated that Dylan would have had to have been wearing muck boots to farm that day because it was raining, and that would explain why his regular boots appeared clean in terms of not having any mud or muck on them when they were found behind that dirt pile. So the boots continue to mystify all of us, but to me it's looking like Dylan would have been wearing his normal boots, not the muck boots. I'm saying that because of Occam's razor. It's the simplest explanation. Also, per Candace Cooley, the grain truck was searched day 1. They looked under the grain to see if Dylan was there. So that should put to bed questions about that grain truck being a hiding place for Dylan. And in case you were not aware, EquiSearch has been out to Lucin to search for Dylan. They turned up in early to mid-May with drones and carried out an extensive search at that time. Also, on Friday, June 24th, 18 mines and caves were searched in Lucin and in Montello, and again, nothing was found. I don't know why those boots were left behind that dirt pile. Someone planting them there to frame Brenner makes sense, but law enforcement has named Brenner their primary suspect, and Candace Cooley has said everything was there at that grain shed property to show them that something bad happened to Dylan there. The pile of dirt was actually a burn pit. Is it possible that Brenner, if he really is the person responsible for Dylan's disappearance, was he planning to burn the boots after? And did he forget to do that? We can't look at Brenner like a rational, with-it person. He's a heavy drinker. Taylina, Kurt's daughter, has said that he doesn't seem like he's all there. Could he have blacked out? Did he think he had more time to clean up? And maybe he wasn't expecting Dylan's family to be so quick to realize that Dylan was missing. We should all pray to have a family that knows about our whereabouts so that if we, God forbid, ever go missing, they can show up early on. Of course, that hasn't helped Dylan yet, but I think it will in the long run. Until the next time on Bed Crime Stories. Now do me a favor, people. Hit that like button, leave me a comment, and if you're not a subscriber, why not? Sign up.